Hi, I'm Amy, and this is A-Star Reads, and this is my Sunday sum up for the week ending in April 1st, which is basically the end of July, except I still have today, the 30th, today's Friday, and the 31st to completely finish out any books I've been reading. If I have any updates for today and for tomorrow, I will include those in the next sum up because I've got to get things done. I've got to get things wrapped up because I'm starting Gish tomorrow, the greatest international scavenger hunt, and I'm the team leader, so I have to be present and ready and excited and, you know, all those good things. So before we talk about what happened this week, let's talk about the next 3 books that I read in May because I'm still trying to catch us up for those last 2 months. I don't remember too much about that time period, that period of my life in May. So we'll see how these reviews go. I'll give you a brief synopsis and then tell you what I thought. Based off what I can remember, I'll tell you what I thought. So the 5th book that I read in May was King Lear by Shakespeare. And I read this as a buddy read with Katja Weinert because we were gonna be reading Station 11 by Emily John St. Mandel together. And we wanted to read this one to prepare us for that because King Lear is spoken of quite heavily in Station 11. And granted, you don't need to have read King Lear to enjoy Station 11 at all, but I loved reading this play before reading Station 11 because there were a lot of mentions of the play in the book, and there was a lot of actual influence into the storyline based off the play itself. So I thought it was a very clever use of literature within literature. I gave King Lear 4 stars. I don't remember what my criticisms were, but ultimately 4 stars is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, 4 stars is fantastic. I really enjoyed this play. What I will say that I listened to a full cast audiobook of this play, which was incredible, while I was reading my version in this giant annotated volume. I have 3 of these. These are all Shakespeare's plays. This one particular is his tragedies and romances. And what was so great about this was that this is really heavy to hold up like this in art, but it had these beautiful pictures that like go over scenes. It'll tell you which artist did these renderings, these pictures. And then there's other sections where it has the actual actors who played the roles of different productions of King Lear. It has like costume design for different productions of King Lear, but then also it's annotated. So you'll have like little dots, and then over here it has the annotations, gives you some notes on it. Some of the annotations are a little more in-depth than others. There were a few where I was like, well, I would have liked to have known what that was. I loved this version, but listening to it while I was reading this was top-notch. And as I've said before, I really appreciate either listening to the audiobook while I'm reading a play or watching a version of the play at some point, either before or after reading it. Because that really enhances my experience because plays are meant to be watched. I want to be able to see them or hear them and enjoy the acting because that is the whole intention behind the creation of a play. King Lear is about this king named Lear, and he has 3 daughters. His youngest daughter is the kindest and sweetest, and she is the most gentle with her father. She actually cares about her father, but she can't lie to him, and he's a very vain man, and he expects her to tell him that he's the most important thing to her in the world. And she can't say what he wants her to say because she won't lie to him because she cares about him so much. And it's not that she doesn't think he's important, it's just that he's being unrealistic in what he's asking her to tell him. And so then she has 2 sisters though, the older sisters, which they're not good characters. They're not sweet daughters. They're not good daughters to King Lear. When he's going through this whole like, tell me how much you love me thing, they blow smoke up his ass. And he is so upset because his favorite daughter is not the one who told him what he wanted to hear. So he basically cuts her out of his life, banishes her, tells her if she comes back, he's gonna kill her. I think he says he's gonna kill her, right? It's been a while since I read it. And the 2 older sisters are kind of taking things over. And the reason this is important at this time is because King Lear is starting to descend into madness. He's struggling with insanity and this blow that he got from his youngest daughter, that he believes she doesn't care about him at all when she's his favorite person. It was incredibly dramatic. Very ridiculous at times. I thought his character was portrayed in a way that was very fascinating. And then you have these other characters that are in this story that are almost like comic relief. And I did enjoy having them in there because this is a tragedy, but it felt like anytime it got too dark and too difficult, Shakespeare wanted to throw a little bit of lightness at you so that you as an audience didn't also fall so deeply into this depressed state watching these really depressed moments. There are some really hard themes that are discussed in this play. And so one of the other characters that I really enjoyed in this was Edmund, who was the bastard son of Gloucester. And the reason I liked him is because he's not likable. He's like awful, but he's a very sympathetic character to begin with. And you just kind of feel bad for him because his father's really just treating him terribly. But then as you progress into the story, you realize how horrible this guy is. And maybe it's a symptom of what he's gone through his whole life. But there's a point when you can't use that as an excuse to be a horrible, terrible person. And so I love those kind of character arcs. I don't have to like the character because they're good people, but I do enjoy where characters change. Okay, so as I was editing this and I was talking about Edmund, I was realizing one of the reasons why I lowered my score on this book. I remember that I didn't really care for the way that this ended out, and I didn't really care for the way that Edmund's character ended out. That's what it was. I completely forgot. Oh my gosh. And I can't tell you about it because that tells you too much. But it's the ending. It was the ending. Okay. Now I know. Now you know. I like how Shakespeare played with his characters. He did that in most of his stories. He likes the bait and switch. He likes to make you think one thing and then something else is true. And that is absolutely true with King Lear. There are surprise characters. There's characters in disguise. One of his favorite themes is having characters in disguise. And it's fun. That's a fun element to all of his books. But overall, what I found really interesting about this story were the multiple representations of what going mad looks like for these characters and what emotional situations happen in their life to set them off and what the trajectory of that mental state is. Okay, so I finally got around to organizing my books. And so I finally filled this shelf. The top section, well, those are all actually just like book boxes. Like they're just boxes you can put things in. And there's my Jane Austen collection. Then this shelf is all horror, thriller, mystery, including one extra down here. These are all romances there. This shelf is all my sci-fi right here. And then down here I have books that I've read. I have a lot more than just these ones, but these are the ones that are out. And then these are my children's books down here that I haven't read. I also then was able to reorganize these shelves. These are still nonfiction up here. I was able to make a little room because I had stuff squeezed in here that was horror, thriller, mystery. This is all my adult and YA fiction, like general kinds of fiction, historical fiction, things like that. Down here is all my classic novels, different types of classic novels on this shelf. And then the increasingly growing fantasy section. So this is all fantasy here, as well as all fantasy down here. So yeah, I've got quite a few fantasy. Oh, and then there's my sci-fi Marissa Meyer collection. Getting everything organized. It feels really good. So the sixth book that I read in May was Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. And this is the first book in the Wayward Children series. I had been anticipating this series for a long time. I've heard mixed reviews, but I was really curious to see what I would think of it. And I gave it a 3.75 stars, which to me is a good rating. I really did enjoy this. I found it fascinating. At first, when I was getting into it, I wasn't sure how much I would like the tone of the story. It's a very dark book, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I tend to like dark books, but I wasn't as invested in the main character of this book as I had hoped. Basically, all the kids in these stories, these Wayward Children stories, have gone to another world because in their regular world, here, Earth, their normal time, normal place, they are not fulfilled. They're not living their best life. So they end up finding a door to go to this other world where they will be able to live their true expression, or at least what they believe to be the life they want to live the most. And in this, we're following Nancy, who's just come back from the fantasy world that she ends up going to. And the thing about this place is that the true self who she wants to be is basically a sculpture. She's learning how to harness stillness. And it's a very strange but interesting concept that this is her dream life. Maybe I just couldn't relate to this character, but I don't have to relate to characters to enjoy them. And so I really liked so much about this, and I'm looking forward to learning about all the other characters in the story. But this one I was like, And then I also realized after reading the second book in the series, which I will talk about later on in this video, that for one, I would like to listen to this one on audiobook. So I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it on audiobook. And two, the second book is a prequel to this one because it's about Jack and Jill, twin characters that are in the first book, but this talks about their story before the first book. And I actually think I would have preferred to read the Jack and Jill story before reading Every Heart a Doorway. So reading this Jack and Jill story made me realize I want to go back and read Every Heart a Doorway now that I know more about the twins. And I'm already now into Seanan McGuire's style. Like, I'm understanding her style. Sometimes it takes a while for me to get into books. And when they're a short story or novella, it's like, you got to grab me right away, because otherwise the book is over and I'm just getting into it. So I guess the nice thing about this being a series is that you kind of start getting the feel for it in the first book. And then even though they're all novellas throughout the series, you've already got that tone. You're prepared for that tone, you know? And so ultimately, it's still 3.75 stars for me. I will be going back and listening to it. The audiobook for the second one was only like 4 hours, so I imagine this one's around the same. And so it should be a quick read once I reread it. So I forgot to mention though that this is an adult fantasy series. I know it's mentioned to be YA in certain places, but it's not YA. I would consider this adult fantasy. And it has some really great LGBTQ plus representation in here. The main character, Nancy, is asexual, and then we do have a trans character who is pretty prominent in this story. So I feel like there is some good representation in this book, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for something very creative, very dark, but new and interesting. This is a good series to try out. But do know that all the books are kind of standalone in a sense. I have heard that they all can be read separately, and you might enjoy some of the others more than this one. So if you get through this one and you're like, I'm not feeling it, don't let that stop you. Don't let that stop you. You'll see my review for the second book coming up. So the seventh book that I read in May was called The Sea in Winter by Christine Day, which I was really looking forward to because I loved I Can Make This Promise, her debut novel, which came out last year. It was one of my favorite 2020 books. I loved that story so much. I loved Christine Day's writing, and I promised myself I would read everything that she came out with, especially because she writes middle grade. And so I was really excited to see what her second book would be like, and I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.5 stars. The main character's name was Maisie. She's a good student. She has really good friends. A lot of good things are going on in her life. She loves ballet above everything. That's one of her favorite activities. And unfortunately, she really badly hurts herself to the point where she can't dance anymore, and she's gonna be missing a lot of dancing in the near future. As someone who is around 12 or 13, I can't remember how old she is, but as someone who's around that age, being told you can't dance for a summer, let alone a whole year or more, is pretty much the end of the world, especially when that's all you want to do. So Maisie drops down into this severe depression, and she's angry at everybody in her life because of this thing that happened to her. At one point in this story, her parents decided to do this road trip to the macaw community, which is on the Olympic coast. It's really meant to expose Maisie and the rest of the family to their culture and to get her mind off the pain and the struggle that she is going through. So I thought that the themes in this were really great to look at. I thought Christine Day does a really good job of getting into the minds of her characters. I could have used a little more emotion in this one actually, and maybe a little more character interaction. There was a little more that I wanted from this. And actually, considering how much I love the descriptive nature of Christine Day's writing, especially in the first book, I felt like this book was a little too descriptive for me. And it's not that I don't enjoy that, it's just that I wasn't getting enough story along with it for my taste. And one of my favorite parts of this book was actually the author's note at the end. Christine Day talks about quite a bit of the culture and the history of the macaw people, and I loved that. She does go into it a little bit in this book, but honestly, I would have loved more of that infused into the story. I thought that there was a really good opportunity with this trip to the macaw community, and I just wanted more. But ultimately, these stories are really important for introducing the indigenous history of, especially of local tribes, especially depending on what area you're from, to a younger audience. And you know that here in Washington, we're working on incorporating since time immemorial curriculum into our education system, which I think is amazing. And books like this is a great way to introduce that history, because there's a lot of elements of history that are infused in here. If you have your students reading this and then expanding on those pieces of history, I think that that would be very, very useful as an educator. And that is why I will always keep these books within my collection in my classroom. So we're not quite finished with all the books that I had read in May, but in the next video, I will finish out my May reviews, and then we'll move on to June. But now let's talk about the books that I have read this past week. All right, so I have finished my 26th book this month. No, I finished, yes! Can you believe since the last catch up, I have read that many books? No, I finished my fifth book. I'm struggling today. Fifth book on the 26th of July. Oh, goodness. And that was Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. I had given Every Heart a Doorway a 3.75, and I just thought it was so creative and very interesting. And the second one is about Jack and Jill. Now, Jack and Jill are two of the children in the Wayward home that you meet in the first book, and you actually get to know quite a bit about them. But the second book is sort of a prequel, so it talks about their experience in the world that they had gone to. You kind of already know the outcome of Jack and Jill in the first book. When you read the second book, you've already found out what happens to them. So I've seen a couple of reviews of people saying, I would read the second book first, since it sort of is a prequel anyways. And I mean, I kind of agree with that, because now that I have read this second book, I want to go back and read the first book again, because I know a lot more about Jack and Jill at this point that I'm kind of like, That's one thing to point out. Secondly, I gave this book 4.5 stars. I loved it. I really, really loved it. I loved it more than the first one. I love the creativity of these books and the idea that Seanan McGuire has in going to this. I really am enjoying the characters. They're not likable characters, but you kind of enjoy learning about them. The writing style is beautiful. There's a lot of great things about her series. However, I felt like the pacing was off in both books. For this book, the very first section where you're learning about Jack and Jill's upbringing with their parents was like 5 stars. And then the center section was kind of a 4-star for me. And then the last section pulled it up again, you know? So I think like a 4.5 is a pretty good balance in between, because sometimes the pacing was just a bit off. Like I like into it, not as interested, losing attention, and then, ooh, really love it again. And I think that that was kind of the same way with the first book, but the first book was even slower paced. I had to give this book back to the library because I wasn't gonna read it this month. I decided, you know, I've got too many other books, I'm not gonna read it. And then I was kind of like, maybe I should just listen to it on audiobook. And it was read by Seanan McGuire herself. So I thought that was even cooler, because you get the author reading their own book, all their own emphasis on different words and whatnot, how they wanted the book to be read. And in this book, it's really interesting. You're seeing the dynamics between these two twins that have sort of been set against each other, because a lot of times when you think of twins, you think of this pair of children who have so much in common, and they spend so much of their time together that they really value each other's company. I know that's not always true, but that is definitely something like I think of when I think of twins, because a lot of the twins that I have met, not all of them, but a lot of the twins that I have met have had very close relationships. Like, they're closer to their twin than they are to anybody else in their life. It was interesting to see this book where these twins have that bond because of being twins, but they've been pitted against each other. And the question, of course, is, do they care about each other? Do they love each other? Will they protect each other? And it's an interesting conversation because you see a huge shift in their personalities throughout this book. It does get very complicated at the end, and their relationship is pivotal to this. And so I found that to be really fascinating. So there's some great LGBTQ plus representation in here, and I will say that even though this is listed as young adult on Goodreads, Seanan McGuire did not intend for this series to be young adult. It's an adult, dark series, and there's very dark subject matter, and in some areas it gets to be pretty graphic. So just keep that in mind. Look up trigger warnings before you read this. And that's that. 4.5 stars for Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I recommend this series if you're interested in strange, quirky... It's not a retelling, but it kind of is, because you get the same vibe as you would from like an Alice in Wonderland or Wizard of Oz sort of thing. I just realized for my 4th and 5th books, I completely forgot to say which prompts they fulfilled for the Summertime Reads Readathon, because I'm still doing that and I want to get all those prompts fulfilled. So for Ship of Magic, this one fulfills the summer job. Read a book that's over 400 pages, because, you know, it's a bit of a job. And I read Ship of Magic, which is 809 pages. So I did double that. And then for the most recent book I read, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, I feel that will fulfill the continued pride. Read a book with an LGBTQ plus main character, because as we find out in this book, Jack is a queer character. Oh, and it also fulfills Summer Fling. Short and sweet, read a book under 200 pages. So book number 5 actually fulfilled 2 of those prompts. So I'm doing pretty well. I think the only ones I need left are Beach Read, books set in a country other than your own, and that's it. One of the group books, which I probably won't end up reading one of the group books. All right, so something really exciting happened this week. Oh, well, it was kind of like last week, but I want to make sure I include it in this week's sum up. And that was that I got some book mail, which was like surprising because I hadn't ordered anything. So I was like, what is this in the mail? It was so much fun because I got a gift from Antonisha from Mrs. Moody Reader. She was helping me celebrate my 1-year anniversary, and to be honest, she spoiled the heck out of me. So she got me 3 books, and let me tell you what she got me because I'm really excited about these. So first she got me The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is a series that I don't know if I've mentioned it at all on this channel yet, but I've been looking forward to this series for a long time. It was pretty popular when I first started BookTube, and something about this intrigues me quite a bit. So I can't wait to read this. Antonisha's thinking maybe we can do a buddy read of this at some point. I know her and I are both like, when are we going to be able to find time to do anything? But I would love to read this with Antonisha when we get a chance. Next, one I have been wanting to read for a really long time, The Poppy Boar by R.F. Kuang. I have been super curious about this series. I don't think I've ever read any grimdark fantasy, so I'll be interested to see how I feel about it. Finally, this next book is one that Antonisha and I have been getting pretty excited about because Paige from Pages with Paige was like singing its praises. She was going crazy over this book. So I'm like, okay, gotta read that one. And that's Malice by Heather Walker, which is another gift from Antonisha. I'm telling you, she's just spoiling me. This was wonderful. Thank you so much, Antonisha. I really, really appreciate it. If you haven't had a chance, please check out our channel and check her out tonight, because tonight Antonisha and I are gonna be doing a live show for Legendborn. So if you've read Legendborn, you wanna come discuss with us, we would love to have you. If you haven't read Legendborn and you're not worried about spoilers, come check us out as well. Hi, so it's July 29th and I have finished my 6th book of the month. I just finished Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I listened to it on audiobook, and this was an interesting read for me. It was an interesting read for me because it made me realize that I should have rated Sense and Sensibility a lot higher. So I love Jane Austen. I love her writing style. I love her social commentary. I think it's a fascinating look at a period of history that it has a very sedentary lifestyle if you were in a specific class. So of course, it really depended on the class that you lived in. And she talks a lot about women and the limitations on women. She talks about society and the limitations that society put on people depending on what class you were in. And what was right and what was wrong. There's a lot of commentary in her books about these different subjects. And then of course there is some political commentary. There is quite a few conversations that she keeps a little hush-hush because, you know, she didn't want to get censored at her time. She puts them in there in little sneaky ways. So you definitely get a lot of Jane Austen's opinions about the things that were going on socially and politically during the time that she was alive. So, that being said, when it comes to Sense and Sensibility, I hated the characters, and I still don't like the characters. Even the main character, Eleanor, she's not my favorite heroine. She's nothing spectacular. The male love characters are not amazing male love characters. Half the characters in that book annoy the heck out of me. However, I realized by reading it this last time that I still love her writing and I love the storyline of Sense and Sensibility, and I was thoroughly entertained. A lot of times I listened to audiobooks in the car, so when I'd get home, I would keep staying in my car so I can listen to more and more of Sense and Sensibility because I wasn't done listening. And so I realized that the enjoyment I got out of reading it really should have warranted a much higher rating. The whole point is to say that based off my review today on Mansfield Park, I realized I should have given Sense and Sensibility a higher rating. Weird, but that's okay. I'm okay being weird. So this is a story about a young woman named Fanny Price. She gets raised by her aunt and uncle, her wealthy aunt and uncle, because her mother, who married down in class and society, had like 8 or 9 children. 2 of her aunts and her uncle decided to pay charity to her family and take on one of the children. So they took on Fanny Price. She comes to live at Mansfield Park, and it's difficult for her because she's not with her immediate family. Although they don't treat her like Cinderella or anything like that, she's quite aware of her lower situation within the household. And it's not until she really befriends her cousin Edmund that she starts getting more confidence in herself within the family. So Fanny Price is living this life, but she's a very timid, quiet person. She's got very strong morals and principles, and a lot of them have been strengthened through her friendship with Edmund, because Edmund, who's going to be a parson at some point in the future, is also very proper, and he really only does the good, the right, the things you're supposed to do within society, and he has very strong principles. I don't want to say she piggybacks off of Edmund's, although I think she does in the beginning, but towards the middle and the end of the story, you really do see where her own principles come into play, and how she also is very perceptive, and she's understanding of people's personalities, whereas Edmund gets blinded. Because Edmund. So the story is really about this family within Mansfield Park, and at one point they have a parson who comes and lives on the property named Mr. Grant and his wife. And Mrs. Grant brings her sister and her brother, the Crawfords, to stay with them for a while. And the Crawfords come and they change everything. Edmund falls in love with Mary, and Henry likes to dabble with women in general, so he is causing problems everywhere. There's not a lot of action in this book in the sense that they actually really stay mostly in Mansfield Park. There's not too much traveling around, but the dialogue and the discussion and everything that happens within Mansfield Park is really what builds the story, because there's a lot of interesting characters doing interesting things with other characters. So I don't know how to explain it without giving anything away, because I don't want to give anything away, but I will say that I rolled my eyes so many times during this book. I'm surprised that they're not stuck at the back of my head, because I rolled my eyes for Edmund, I rolled my eyes for Fanny, I rolled my eyes for this character, I was just, every single time they spoke, I was rolling my eyes because I wanted to squeeze them. I can say that Jane Austen does a great job of making characters that are not likable. And that is very true for Mansfield Park, as it was true for Sense and Sensibility. The difference is that I enjoyed the story for Sense and Sensibility a lot more than I enjoyed the story for Mansfield Park. It's still Jane Austen. It's still really good. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars because I did enjoy so many elements to this. The ending to me was very weak, and that was where I got a bit disappointed. And then there were a few sections in there, like the play section and a few other scenes that I was they were kind of long-winded, and they didn't do as much for me as I would have liked. And I don't know that the outcome is necessarily an outcome I liked. Just, I wanted to see something different happen. Edmund drives me freaking up the wall. And Fanny did too a lot of the times. And then of course all the other characters, but they're flawed characters, so of course they're gonna be annoying. Mrs. Norris is one of the worst people on the planet. She is probably the worst character of all of Jane Austen's characters. I would say Mrs. Norris is probably the worst character of all the ones I've read so far, meaning like the most ugly, awful person. She was awful. So it was fun to hate her. Yeah, and so I don't know what else there is to say about this. It was much more of a dialogue-heavy story as far as Jane Austen's books go, and I didn't dislike that. It was just that the story wasn't quite as enjoyable for me as her other ones were. And then I got more book mail. It was insane. I don't know what's going on. It was really exciting. So I actually ended up opening the mailbox and finding another book in there, which I know wasn't me because I am on a book buying ban and I'm doing a good job of that. But one of my subscribers, who's been a subscriber for a while, Michelle, sent me a book, and it was wonderful, and I'm guessing it was to celebrate my first year anniversary. She said, "I love your channel and appreciate all the energy you put into it." Thank you so much. I love doing it. I really enjoy doing it, and I'm so glad that everybody's enjoying it. I'm so glad to hear that. And thank you so much for the comments you make on my videos. I really love hearing from you, and the support. The support is wonderful. So Michelle got me The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, which I'm so excited about. I am so excited about this. As you know, I am enjoying the Broken Earth trilogy so far. This is actually one that I've wanted to read for a long time. I've heard a lot about it. I love New York City. My friend read it fairly recently, and she said that she wasn't quite as into it because she's not as interested in New York City. But I love New York, so I was like, oh, this is the kind of book I'm going to enjoy. And I think it's sci-fi. Is it sci-fi or fantasy? I can't remember exactly, but doesn't matter. I really think this is a book that piques my interest and sounds like something I will enjoy. So thank you so much, Michelle. I can't wait to read this. Woo! Sometime when my TBR is not so long. Okay, so then let's briefly talk about what I'm currently reading and what this next week is going to look like. Because honestly, it's not going to look like much. I still have a lot of books I'm working on, and Gish started today. So we are ready to get this thing going. Already kind of getting our feelers out there, trying to figure out what we can get done. I don't know how much reading I'm going to be able to get to, but you know, everybody needs a little bit of a break sometimes. I don't know. We'll see. But I am on page 339 of Crazy Rich Asians. I'm pretty far in. This one is a very fast read. I don't get a chance to pick it up that much because I've been really busy. But when I do pick it up, I'm like boom, 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 flying through it really quickly. So I will have this one done fairly soon. And then I did not get a chance to pick up The Passion yet. This is what I want to do a specific vlog for because it's a Trash My TBR book. I actually still need to read these for Trash My TBR. If I can, I'm going to try and vlog them all in the same video. So that's the plan. Luckily, you know, these three are really short. And this one I'm listening on audiobooks, so hopefully it won't be too bad. Also, I've started searching Marilyn Monroe by Payvio. He's a fellow booktuber. His channel is Attention, and I will link it in the description box down below. I'm enjoying this so far, but I'm not trying to rush through it too quickly because I really respect Pay and I want to take the time and really appreciate his work. Finally, this bad boy, Outlander. I'm still on page 82. I have not picked it up once. Not picked it up once since the last time I talked about it. So I will be getting to this. I have decided I'm committed to reading this. So I don't think it'll take me too long to read this. The writing style is pretty easy to get through. I just know how things are going right now, and it's just not going to happen until after I finish Crazy Rich Asians and Gish. So we'll see what happens. Maybe at some point I'll pick it up on audiobook. I don't know, because I'm also listening to Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, and that I'm 68% of the way through. And I've just started listening again to The Golden Compass because we had our little book discussion, and now we're ready to listen to the next 5 chapters. So I think that's it. That's enough. That's enough. That's plenty of books that I'm working on right now. So wish me luck on Gish. We've got a good team. I'm excited, and thank you for sticking through my sum up. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see what happens. I'll be including Gish footage, so you can see what the heck I'm talking about when I talk about this scavenger hunt thing. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.